Study says that the 92% of the people fail to achieve their goals, and the majority of this 92% people feels that it is very very difficult to try something out. Artificial intelligence, the AI, is everywhere and it's everything. Now, as a web developer, as a UI developer, if you think I'm far away from trying out AI, I'm far away from embracing AI because it is difficult, I think we are going towards joining those 92% out there. So, what we can do about it? We can make our hands dirty. We can get started. And the first step towards getting started would be, let's try out something. Let's figure out whether things are really difficult or there are some rumors around it. So, the first step we are going to take in today's video, for many of you who are still thinking how to start using AI with your web application, with your UI code, and how to make something useful, how to make something cool, at the same time, start understanding how each of the layer work together. That's the reason today we are going to build something using the feature of React 19 along with the essence of artificial intelligence and build something really wonderful. So what are we building today? A smart application called CodeSplain. It can explain the programming language. It can explain your source code in plain English. That's the objective of this particular application. So here you can select the language, programming language, say JavaScript, Python, Java. You can add as many as you want. And then you paste a code snippet for that language, which you want this application to explain to you in plain English in as much as detailed possible. Now, once you hit the explain code button, it starts thinking, and after a while, is going to give that output that you're looking for. Here you go. The explanation is out, and let's look into the explanation closely. What the code does step by step is going to tell you, like, let's create an array and how the things work, each of the variable, each of the iterations, each of the brackets, syntaxes, everything that is going to give an output in front of you. Isn't that amazing? So what we are using at the background, we'll be using the power of artificial intelligence, we'll be using certain LLMs, and then in the UI side, we'll be using the power of React 19, the power of React 19 forms, and few formatting libraries together to build this application. Are you up for it? Let's get started. If you want to imagine the UI in terms of diagram, it will look like this. We will have our UI over here. UI built with React 19 because that's the latest. And then we will also create a server using Express.js. And this server will help us to connect to some of the AI models, which will do variety of jobs that we'll ask them to do. So if you think about the flow from the UI, we would send some requests to our server, which is built on Node.js, Express.js, and the server in turn will use certain AI models, maybe its APIs, and get some work done. After the work being done, the server will fetch the response, and the same response server might want to process further and send it back to our UI, and UI is going to render. And if you take any full stack application which is having a UI, having a backend, having a database, I'm sure at a high level you will be drawing things like this, what I have drawn. Now here, instead of a database, we are utilizing a service, and the service is nothing but related to AI and its model, right? So that's what we're going to do. So far things are exactly similar or mostly similar to the things that you have been doing already. Not much rocket science, right? Now let's start building these layers one by one. Let us get started with the AI layer, the AI model that we are going to talk about and what we're going to use and how are we going to configure that. Fortunately, there are a variety of AI services out there that we can leverage and we can use. For example, OpenAI. OpenAI has got a developer platform where you can register and then you can start using their APIs. This code snippet shows how easily we can start using OpenAI APIs just by creating this client and then specifying which model you would like to use and what is our input prompt, and based on that how am I going to expect the output. This is a very very easy code snippet that if you're a JavaScript developer or you are a Python developer, you can just switch between these languages and you can make sense of it, right? So OpenAI is definitely one option for you that you can get started immediately. There is one more project that I would like to highlight is called Nebius. So this is the provider for cloud infrastructure and the services to AI and the machine learning developers worldwide. I found this is quite easy to use and there are a variety of models exist that you can start experimenting with. For example, if I go to their AI Studio, by logging into AI Studio, you can find the options called models, and here you have a bunch of models based on what you want to achieve. If you want to do text to text conversion, you have a bunch of models. For text to image, there are a bunch of models. There are variety of models that based on your use case you can pick up. If you have credits available for OpenAI, you can use it. If you have for Gemini, if you have for anything else, you can use it. Some of these platforms give you some initial credit to try out things so that you don't have to really pay it at the start of it. But eventually, the more you use it, more you'd like to dive into it. You might have to pay some bucks, maybe $8 to $10 to recharge the account, and that will really go for a longer period of time for you to experiment it out. So if you are really keen to enjoy learning this, doing something about it, I think it's worth spending that amount of money if you can, so that you can start using these APIs and start building something really solid based on the use case that you have in your hand. So today I'm going to show you one of the use case using one of this model, which is based on the text to text model. Maybe I'll pick up this one alone. That's all about it. So I'm going to get into understanding how to utilize this particular model and its APIs in my code. For that, if I just scroll down and click on this particular sign for the code, it gives me the code. You see, it gives me the code for Python, it gives me the code for curl, it gives me the code for JavaScript. Now what I'm interested in the JavaScript code, because just now I told that my middle layer is nothing but a server which we'll be building using Express.js. So that's JavaScript, right? So if I want to consume some API from any of the AI model, it has to be JavaScript. That's the reason from here I'll be picking up the JavaScript equivalent. If you're using OpenAI, you'll be doing the same thing. You'll be picking up a JavaScript equivalent. And then I'll be following the specification that is provided by this model or this particular platform that I need to follow. For example, I have to create a client over here if I'm using this. And for client, I need an API key. So I have to generate an API key. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then the base URL for the model to access. And once I have the client, then I can actually specify the model that I want to use. In this case, this is the model GPT OSS 120B I'm going to use, and then my prompt, the role, etc. I'm going to talk about each of these things as and when I'm progressing coding using this. If I'm using OpenAI, I'll be again specifying the model, whether it's a GPT-5, this is a recent one, you guys know, and then the input prompt, and then again I have to have the API key for this as well. I have to generate the API key for this too. If you're using OpenAI or want to use OpenAI, click on this settings icon, and then here click on the API keys. Over here you can create a new API key. I've already created an API key some time back, but if you want, you can create it. Similarly for this guy also, if you want to create an API key, you go to your profile, there will be API keys, click on this, and then get API key, just create a new API key. And then note that API key down somewhere, because that's all we need to get started. So I hope with this explanation, we are good. We are set now to start using the model. And I told that for our use case, it is text to text. It means that you'll be providing bunch of text in form of your source code. And then what you're expecting back, a bunch of text, which is nothing but the explanation in English for that particular source code, right? So it's a text to text. So the model that I can pick up any of them. I'm just picking up this one, GPT OSS 120B. You can pick up any other that you wish to. After understanding this, the next thing would be creating our Express server that will talk to this model using the API and get things moving. Let's start creating the server. For that, on VS Code, I'm going to create a new folder called server, and then I'm going to open the terminal. Now inside the server folder, I have to initiate a new node project. For that, I will do npm init. Yes, give the package name as server. Let's accept all the default values for now. All these inputs are fine. Let's create one. So I have a package.json file created because I have given npm init and it has created this. Now to get this server up and running, I need to install a few libraries. So I want you to follow this step to install a few libraries. You can use npm command, you can use yarn, you can use pnpm, whatever you're comfortable with. I use yarn, so I'll be starting with yarn. So I'll say yarn add, and then I list down the package name that I want to install. So the first one I'm installing is Express. Then I'll be installing something called cars. I need .env because I need the support of env variable, the environment variables. Yes. Then install a package called Helmet. I'm going to explain what it does in case you are not aware. And let's use this package called Express Rate Limit. In case you are going to host it somewhere, publicly, you might want to do some kind of rate limiting, because each of the call that you're ultimately be making into your LLM AI side of things, you have to pay certain cost, right? Because I spoke about recharging it, topping it up every time based on your usages, you have to provide that money. Hence, you have to make sure that the rate limiting is there. So with this, let's install them. So things are getting installed, and I found a node underscore modules also created. The package.json got all these libraries as dependencies also over here. Great. Now, the next thing that we're going to do inside the server folder, let's create a new file called server.js. Okay, this is our server file, and we are going to run this server file using a script that we're going to put inside the package.json file. Here inside the script section, put dev, and over here write node server.js, so that next time once you run npm run dev or yarn dev or the command with pnpm, it's run server.js file in the node environment, and inside the server.js file, now we are going to code things one by one. All right, so first thing that I am interested to import is .env config, because I'm going to use environment variable, things like API keys and all. I don't want to keep inside the code and want to just commit. I will be rather keeping them under a .env file, and would love to load all the environment variables from the .env file. That's the reason I need this import. And then of course I need to import Express. I've installed just now. Import costs, because we want to take care of cross origin resource sharing, the policies and everything. I'm going to show you how to set them up. Then let's import rate limit from express-rate-limit that we have installed. And finally, let's import Helmet. Why Helmet is required? Helmet is actually a cool library that secure Express apps by setting HTTP response header. So it sets up a bunch of policies like content security policy, like origin resource policy, which is nothing but the CORS policy, a bunch of policies to make sure that your app is secured, right? So if you are developing an Express.js application, Helmet is something would be your friend. So whenever you are instantiating your application or the server, make sure that you are using Helmet also with that. So we are going to do all these things in our code right away. Let's go back. So after all the import, the first thing that I am going to do is to instantiate my app const app equals to Express. Now we're going to write the security middleware, security middleware. Here we have the app, which is nothing but an Express app, and we'll call the method called use, and inside this I'm going to instantiate Helmet and pass. Okay, so that's the way all these policies that we just now spoke about are already integrated with my Express application. Next thing, what I'm going to use, I have incorporated the CORS, right? So what we can do, we can use the CORS with certain settings. What kind of settings we're talking about? First thing, we can tell like, okay, from which origin we allow request to this particular server. We don't want this server to be hit by all the origin, all the IP address from the globe. Rather, we want to restrict that if my UI is hosted on a particular domain, only from that domain I am going to provide access to the server, so that underlying the API, the AI LLM APIs also can be accessed only from my UI domain. Can I do that? Yes, that's the exact thing I can do by setting up the CORS origin policy. So do that using the origin property. Over here, you can say, okay, allow my front-end URL. If the front-end URL is not there, it looks like that I am running on localhost, because I am just now developing, and my localhost could be, running on 3000, for example. Allow only this. Now, from where this process.env.frontend URL is coming from? That's what is supposed to come from a file called .env. If you are new to environment variables and managing environment variables, you create a kind of hidden file, because it starts with dot, say .env, and inside that you define a key value pair. And why we call it as hidden file? Because you want to make sure that this particular file is never gets checked in into your source repository. So that's the reason I'll be also creating git ignore, and inside the first thing that I'm going to do is .env, specifying it so that by mistake also I am not going to check in, commit, push this particular env file where I'm going to have a bunch of details which could be sensitive. For example, I want to define my front-end URL. Let's say it's running from localhost 5173 because I'm going to create a React application in a while using Vite, and Vite by default run it on 5173. So I'm saying that front-end URL is going to be HTTP localhost 5173. Now, once I deploy my front end on Vercel, Netlify, Render, AWS, Azure, I'll be getting certain public IPs, right, or public URL. Then I can come and specify that public URL over here, which will tell my server that this particular server can be accessible only from my public URL, right? So this is what I'm specifying over here. Along with that, let us provide another options called credentials. Making credentials is true. So helmet is done, cost setting is done. I think the last thing that we'll be doing about the rate limit setting. So for that also do app.use, and we need a limiter. So we have to create a limiter. Let's create a limiter first. Const limiter equals to, we have import and rate limit, right? So we'll take rate limit and we'll configure the rate limit now. So first, let's create a window in millisecond. The property for that is window ms. Here, I am going to give a 15 minutes of window. So 15 into 60 into 1000. So this is a 15 minutes of window. Within this 15 minutes window, X of, let's say 100, it means I'm limiting each IP to send maximum of 100 requests within this 15 minutes of window. And if it exceeds, that also you have to take care. So in that case, we will have something called a message request from this IP. Please try again after some time. If you try to access GitHub APIs, for example, too many times, you will have this rate limit, right? After some time, you won't be able to access the APIs anymore because there is a rate limit provided over there. This is how you do it. Now I have a limiter, so I'm going to take this limiter and simply passing over here. That's it. My limiter is also set. So along with rate limiter, I can also do like what is the data size that I want to limit to. For example, I can do things like this, that I limit it to 10 MB maximum. Beyond that, is going to throw out the error. So the idea over here to show you that how easy it is to create an Express server, and then you create a bunch of middleware using the use method of it, and then you pass whatever you want to configure. We have done with helmet, we have done with cost, we are done with the rate limiter, we have also done with the size of the body that we will be dealing with, or the responses that we'll be dealing with. Now, after doing all this, I think we are set to start using the LLM and the power of it, using the API keys that we just now spoke about, and then start writing the logic in the server side. But one thing over here, this is an Express server. So finally, what will be the outcome of it? The outcome of it will be a bunch of API endpoints. Now, if you're familiar with REST endpoints already, I have created a video explaining what is an API, what is REST API, what is GraphQL, and etc. You can check it out. If you're already familiar with REST APIs, you know that by REST standards, there will be endpoints, and each of the endpoint would point to one of the resources that your server is managing or handling. Now, the management and the handling of the resources come from the fact that either you will be creating a resource, you will be reading it, or you will be updating it, or you'll be deleting it. A bunch of operation that you can do, the CRUD operation, that's what we say. Now, a tool, a framework called Express enable you to create those endpoints. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to create an endpoint called explain code. So if someone hit this endpoint, says /API/explain code, passing certain information while hitting this API on my server, they are going to get back the response from that particular API, which will be the English formatted text of the source code that they will be passing while calling that API, right? So now to create that is very, very easy. You have to first determine, okay, using the Express server, which is my app, because I have done app equals to Express over here, what kind of method we are talking about. It has get, post, put, delete, all these kind of methods are there. What kind of method we are talking about? Don't you think we are talking about the post method? Because post is the method through which you can pass certain payload, certain information from your client to the server. Now, if you remember the UI that I have showed you in the beginning, you were able to select a language, whether it is JavaScript, Java, or Python, and then you were able to paste a source code. Then you were able to click on a button, and then you will be sending a bunch of information to the server side. Now, from the client side, you have to send a bunch of information to the server side for processing. That means the method that you will be inclined to use is the post method. And once you do app.post, you have to pass a few things. First thing is the URL. The URL means the API URL. The API URL, what you want to do is should be constructed by yourself. For example, I want to create an API URL, say /API /explain hyphen code. So whenever someone do /API/explain hyphen code from the client side, be it Postman or React application, Angular application, whatever it is, with a post call, this will be called. But this is not enough. You also need to handle the request and the response while making this call, isn't it? So for that purpose, I have to do a request and a response handling mechanism over here. This is a pure callback function. So this callback will be called whenever somebody is hitting this particular endpoint using this method, so that I can get the request and I can see what is there inside the request. And from the request, I can extract out information and I can do whatever I want to do with that. And once that piece is done, I can form a response and then I can return back. So the caller of this particular endpoint using this method can get back something after I process the request over here. You're understanding? So far, we are in the box of the server side alone, but still we are able to visualize that when some requests come from the client, I am now having the ability to do something over here, build a response and send it back to the client. What am I going to do? In this case, probably I'm going to call something on my LLM, because LLM also gives me an API, and then I want to do some processing based on what I get out of request and then send back the response. Let's keep writing the code. So if we come to our LLM list and then look forward to get an LLM, for example, GPT-OS 120B, and then look into the code for this, which we have seen a while back, and go to JavaScript, we see that there is a use of a package called OpenAI. Also, we need the API key. Once you log into the AI Studio, you can click on this get API key. And once the API key has been generated, you can copy this secret key, come to your code editor, open up the .env file, and then add the API key over here. We already had the front end URL. Now I have added the API key information as well. That's all we need for connecting our Express server code to the API to interact with that LLM. That's it. Now, next thing is to continue on the server.js. Now, once this post call has been made, there are two information that will be passing from client. One is the language, whether it's a JavaScript code, Java code, Python code, whatever it is, and the source code itself. So on the request.body, we can expect code and language to come from the client side. So we have destructured those code and the language information. It means it's going to create two variables called code and language and assign the respective values that are coming from the client side to these variables for us to work on. You can always handle error conditions. I would definitely suggest you do it. So for that purpose, let's put a try catch around. So here I have put a try catch, and here I'm handling the error. In case there is an error, putting it into the console.error. And also, if you notice it over here, I was talking about the response. I'm setting the status code for the response. In this case is 500. It means server error, and giving a message saying that, hey, this is a server error and the details of the server error is inside this error.message. So on the client side, I can extract error.message. I can extract the details and everything and work on it to show it to the user like there is a server error in case it happens. All right. So after getting the code and language, there are few basic validations that I would suggest that we have. For example, if user has not passed the source code itself, then I can say that the source code is mandatory, right? So I can again return a status code of 400, and then of course more information about the error saying that code is required. So if someone is missing to pass the code, I'll be able to send this status code and the error message, so that again it can be handled in the UI. Now it's all about executing this code, guys. So I have to create a client, and for that I need the OpenAI package, and then I have to construct a message. I have to tell which model I'm going to use, and that's it. Once I make this create call, an asynchronous call is going to happen. I have to handle the promise to get the response, and that I have to send it back to my client side. So first thing first, let's install OpenAI. This is the OpenAI TypeScript and JavaScript API library. You can do npm install OpenAI or yarn add OpenAI. Let me do that. I'll go back to my command prompt, and over here I'll do yarn add OpenAI. Is getting installed. Awesome. It's got installed in the package.json also. I can see OpenAI is here. Excellent. So I'll go back to server.js, and in my import section, let me import OpenAI from OpenAI. First, I need to construct this client. So let me just copy paste this code. Go to VS Code, and over here, I'll paste it out. The base URL remains same. In case you use this API key in multiple places in your service or in your server, it is also advisable that you create a variable called API key, and then this API key you can use in multiple places, so that everywhere you don't have to really do process.env dot your API key name. So this is a practice that I follow, thought of showing you. So I have the client created now. So next is I have to create this messages, this particular thing through which I'll be providing the prompt and few other configurations, and also I have to specify which model I'm using. For this video I'm using this particular model, so I'm going to go with this. So coming to our post call where we say /API/explain code, after all this validation been done, let's construct the messages array. In the messages we have to specify two things. One is the role and another is the content, the prompt. So the role we will specify as user, and then the next thing is the content that we have to specify in a string. So it is like the prompt. I'm sure like all of you are aware what prompt is by now. Prompt is a way to tell the AI model to take certain actions or take certain queries, and in turn get you the response that you are looking for, right? At a very high level, that's what the prompt is. Now if I have to create a prompt, what kind of prompt that I'll be creating over here? Here I am telling my model, hey, I have this language, see JavaScript, Python, whatever it is, and I have this code, source code for this particular language. Please explain this. Okay, so I will rather start it like, please explain this, and then I can put certain conditions over here. If I have the language, do I have the language? Yes, I have the language. If language is passed, great. So I'll say language. In case language is not passed, let's take an empty string. So I'm saying, please explain this JavaScript, Java, Python, or if it is not passed, if it is undefined, then please explain this, and then there is an empty string. And after that, I'm going to end this prompt saying code in simple terms, then colon, and then if you are giving some code, you usually give it the what backticks, and then type JS, Python, whatever it is like. So let's give some backticks with escape, and then I am going to put the language information over here, say language. If language is not there, again fallback is the empty string, and then I can do again new line /n. Then I will do the code, then again /n, end with 3 backticks. So what it may look like, if you pass a language, say JavaScript, and there is a code, JavaScript snippet, it would look like this 3 backticks, JS, then the next line. Here it will be like const x equals to 23, and then you have this backtick ends, right? This is how we provide the code snippet, right? This is the exact thing I'm constructing over here, but in terms of string. If the language is applied, and let's say language is JavaScript, then it will be like, please explain this JavaScript code in simple term, then new line. Here it will be JavaScript, and then the code over here, and then it ends with a backtick in the next line. If the language is missing, then this won't be there, and the prompt will be, please explain this code in simple terms, then the code alone will be there. So both the scenarios we have handled. I hope you got this one. So that's how the messages look like. We are passing one prompt in the array, and we can now utilize these messages pass to an API which is called create, and we have to do client we have already created, client.chat.completions.create, and here we are passing an object. In this object we'll pass the model and the messages as it is. I will also show you by passing few more parameters to it or few more options to it. I'm going to explain this as well. So let's go back to code. So right after this we are going to say const response equals to This is an asynchronous call, so starts with await. The API that we'll be calling is client.chat.completion.create, passing certain options and ending the parenthesis. Now, what are the options that we're going to pass one by one? The first is to talk about the model, right? So the model we have told again and again that this is the model we are using for this video. Then we have to pass the messages. I can just take the messages, pass over here, and there are few other things also you can configure. For example, you can define a temperature and a max tokens. But what are these? It is very important that we understand some of these terminologies. I think that is where we find AI or stepping into AI a bit difficult, because some of the terminologies are little bit, odd. So once you understand those terminologies, it becomes very, very easy. So let me explain this to you. First is the model. What it is? Model is something that tells the API which AI brain to use. Which AI brain we are using in this case. We are using GPT OSS 120B. This is the one that we are using. A specific large language model, which is nothing but the LLM. Now, different models will have different capability, different speed, and different kind of cost. Next is the temperature. Let's talk about the temperature, because messages is what we have already discussed. That's the prompt, user given prompt. Now the temperature, what it is, it control how creative versus focus the response should be. If you give a value, say 0, it will be more deterministic answer. For example, always the same answer if the input is the same. If the value is 1, then it will be more creative and the varied, more randomness in the output that what you will realize. And if it is 2, then it will be like more wild and unpredictable. So we don't usually use 2 in production. So temperature 0.3 means it is like between 0 to 1. So you want it to be deterministic, at the same time a little bit creative and little bit varied every time you ask the answer. But in most of the cases, it will be deterministic, because you would like to get the similar kind of response or the explanation for the similar kind of code snippet. The last part is the max tokens. Max tokens determine or limits the length of your response. A token is roughly about 4 characters or say 0.75 words. Depends on the language, of course. I'm just talking very, very high level. So 800 tokens, if we do the math, it will be like 600 words of maximum response at a very high level. So why we require max tokens? Because we can prevent the AI from giving super long answer, wasting the computation power, wasting the cost and everything. Hence, if you're giving a code snippet to explain, you would require at least 500, 600 words of explanation so that you can understand like what exactly happening. That's the reason the max token is given as 800. So I hope all these things are clear. Now let's continue the code and finish this up. Now, as we have the response, from response, we can get the actual explanation of the output that we're looking for. How do we get it? So once we get the response, inside response, there will be an array called choices. So we will take the choices array. In the choices array, the first object is what we will be looking for. And inside that, there will be a object called message. Inside message, there will be a property called content. And this is what we are looking for. Inside this, we have the explanation. So you can write const explanation a variable, and this is what is going to give us the explanation. Again, over here also, just like before, you can have a validation. If you haven't got the explanation, then you are giving a 500 saying that you failed to explain the code, right? So that UI can handle this. So after this, the last remaining thing will be to create a response with the explanation that we got, and we can also return the language that we got, because once someone getting this response, they will be double sure that for a specific language they got a particular explanation. And if we don't get anything, we are sending basically unknown. So that's all about this endpoint we wanted to create to deal with the code as a resource, or the code explanation as a resource, and we are creating the explanation and we are returning back in form of a response. Now the last thing left is that we do the essential part to make sure that we can start this server. For that purpose, we need a port that we want to start this server. So let's define a port, const port. You can hardcode this over here, or you can also take it from the env. That's also a good practice. Process.env.port. If this is not available, then I'm hardcoding to 3002. So I'll take this port information, and now I have added a port called 3001. If it is not defined, it will be 3002. If it is defined, it's going to take 3001. Okay. Then we have to do app. App is nothing but our Express, and there is a method called listen. That's take the port that we have defined, and again a callback function. Inside that, we can do whatever you want to do. For example, I can give a console.log of our API server is listening on, HTTP, localhost, whatever the port that we could get, right? So this is good. This looks great. I think it's time that we can start this server and see how this particular API works. Now, one thing that I want to do over here before I start writing a single line of UI code, I want to test this API from Postman. So I'm going to open Postman and then pass this code and language as my request body. And then I'm going to see whether it is really returning me this explanation or not, so that I can test out my code well before I finish writing the client side React code and done all the integration. And towards the end, before that, I should test it out, right? So let's do that. In the package.json file, we already have a script called dev that will do node and then the server.js, where we have written everything about the server. So you can do either node server.js here, or can do just npm run dev or yarn dev. Also, another thing I want to point out, make sure that your package.json is having the type called module, because we have used it like a module, and hence we have used a lot of import commands. If it is not module, you have to use require. Just for your information, I have already created a video explaining what is the difference between module, what is the difference between require, and then the common JS and everything, and when to use what. You can take a look into it for more deeper understanding of these things. But for this one, please use type as a module in case your package.json is missing that. All right, so coming to this command prompt, let's do yarn dev. And now my server is listening on the port 3001, because 3001 is available for me. The next thing I would do, I'll bring my Postman. So this is the Postman. Here I have created a collection for AI, because I've been testing a bunch of things, recently to create videos. So one of the things that we are doing today is called explain code. By the way, stay till the end. I'm also going to explain to you how to do this, summarizing a paragraph, initiating a chat message, or how to write a write assistant so that you can create a React project using this as a backend. All are easy once you understand this. So stay till the end. Now I go to explain code. So for this, it will be a post call, and we are running on 3001 API explain code, and we have to go to body and we have to pass certain parameter, isn't it? So for that purpose, I'll go to raw data and select JSON as a format, and here I'll be passing the JSON, where I'll be passing the language information and the code information. So my payload looks like this. Language is JavaScript, and code is a function called greet, takes a parameter called name, and then just does a return hello, this particular name. And then there is a console.log, and I'm saying greet tapas. That's it. Simple thing. Now, if I execute this code, what I'm expecting an explanation, because /API/explain hyphen code is the API service written by me that is internally calling the API on that LLM and passing this information the way that it is requiring for creating a prompt and giving me the response. All right. Now you have to pass this in a stringify format. When we are going to React, where user is going to give me the code, I have to handle that to stringify it and pass it so that it can be passed as a string. Now let's do the send. It's going to take some time. I hope that it becomes successful. It does. So I get a 200, okay, and I'm getting an explanation. If you see, the explanation comes as what the code does step by step, then /n/n, look like some kind of MDX format over here of a table, and then it explains this code. Inside the function, it builds a text string, blah blah blah. Awesome, right? And it also return me like which language that I have passed, a JavaScript language, and that is what is responding to me. So it means my API is working now. As my API is working now, I can now think about my React code, isn't it? Let's build the React code, and this is where I am going to introduce you a lot of concept about React 19, especially the form handling, along with consuming this particular API and handling its response. Let's do that. To start with the React part, we are going to use an existing repository to bootstrap our project. And this is Vite based, Tailwind CSS based. So everything is configured. We're just going to bootstrap using it. So for that, I have a repository on my organization, GitHub Etapus. There I'll go inside repositories. And here it is called Code in React 19. You go inside that. And then once you scroll down, you have this command. Just copy this one, clicking here. Go back to VS Code or the editor that you're using, and at the root of it, make sure that you're not inside the server folder that we have created before. Just come out one level above and then paste it. Change this project name with something that you feel like. For example, I give it as code explain. It sounds like code explain, and then do an enter. It cloned this entire repository code in React 19 in inside this folder you see over here. So I have this entire code base coming over here. Now I will do a cd of my new folder codes plain. First thing I'm going to do an yarn install. So it's going to install the node modules and everything. Excellent. And then I'm going to do an yarn dev so that initial UI start running. The initial UI is a localhost 5173 running using Vite. So if I go to browser now, open up another tab and do localhost 5173, I see the initial version of my application is running basically. But we don't need any of this, right? So we're going to delete and start putting our own code bases, start putting our own components one by one. Let's start doing that. So inside src, you will find something called app.jsx. So coming to app.jsx, I have all this code over here. I'm going to delete them all together. Okay. And inside src, I'm going to create a folder called components. And inside components, let's create one component called codeentry.jsx. And let me create this component once quick. So I have created a component called codeentry and it has a div for now. And I'm exporting from here, going to app.jsx file. Let me just import codeentry. And over here, let me just return code entry. That's all, right? So if I go to the UI right now, it just says code entry. Fair enough for me because that's the only portion of code I have written inside code entry. I forgot to show you one thing. If I go to the package.json file of this React side of thing, I will see the dependencies are added as React 19.1, React.19.1, and you also see the Tailwind CSS 4 is what I'm using. Excellent. So let's proceed. Now let's imagine how are you going to break this application into different components. So anytime, especially work with React, which is component based, it's always a good practice that you start from scratch by thinking how your component should be and what are the way that they want to interact with each other. Then you will identify the state and all these things pretty easily and pretty fast, right? So that's how I always teach, like whenever you're doing something with React, think from the component way early in the design phase itself. So we are thinking a UI something like this, right? Here we will have some heading and then we will probably have an area over here which will have a text area for me to give that code snippet, and then there will be a button over here, and then let me just expand it a little bit more, that some area over here where I will see the explanation, right? This is how the UI is. So this is the area where you'll be giving the code. Oh, there will be one more thing. I'll push this button below. I will push this guy below. So there will be a language chooser, right? So there will be something through which you can choose the language. Then here you will be giving the code. This is the button you will hit. And then once the response comes back, it will show the explanation over here. This is how I am imagining my UI. Now to do that, this entire UI, this entire thing from here to here, what we're calling as code entry. So this is what is code entry. Now this heading one, we can have a component which we can name as say header. So I have header which is inside code entry. Now this entire thing, this guy can go inside something called a form because there is a submit kind of thing is there after you select a language, after you provide what is the code and hit this button. So this can be a form. So we can call this as code explain form. And then this particular thing we can call as explanation. Now this guy, if we want, we can also keep it inside the form itself. Or if we want to keep it outside, we can do that as well, right? But overall, I think these are the components that I'll be looking for. I already have app.jsx. Inside that, I have created a code entry already. Inside code entry, I'm going to create a heading, and then I'm going to create a code explain form. Inside that, I'm going to use this element of form. And once the form gets submitted, I'm going to make that API call that I have written /API./explain code. And then once the response is back, I'm going to show the response over here. Now, one more thing that I want to add over here, I want to show you how server action works in React 19 along with this particular form. So I want to use the capabilities of React 19 form along with server action to make sure that I call my endpoint. So whenever this form gets submitted, by clicking on this button, I will invoke a server action. This server action in turn going to call my API, which is nothing but this /API/explain-code. Understood? The entire picture is in front of you. At the design level itself, you are deciding what you're going to do. Now it's just a matter of time to put this thing in the code and execute it. So in the code entry app, we need a header and then the explanation form, right? So let's create a header component first. We'll go inside the components, create a, so this is a skeleton. What you can do, instead of returning a simple div, we will create a semantic header, and here we can give one h1, and you can give it like our application name, which is code explain, and let's add a few classes so it looks better. I've added a flex layout and then justify between item center, full width, some margin bottom. Why I have done a flex layout, tomorrow if you want to add a nav bar, you can easily add it after h1, so I'm leaving up to you. And on h1, let's add a few more classes to make it a bigger one, bold one, etc. So header is done. Now we'll go to code entry, we will import, and then I'm going to get rid of this text. In the div, I'll be using header. Let us also add a few classes to this div because it's the parent of everything, where we are giving a minimum height screen, you can see, which is like minimum height of 100 VH so that it covers the entire area. Then giving a flex because there will be more elements coming. Of course, a form will come over here, giving a flex call so that they stack one after another, making item center and some padding. That's it, very simple. So the header part is done. Now it's time that we go to the UI ones. Yes, I see this header coming over here. Codes plane is here. Now next thing we're going to do is to create the form. Let's do that. To create the form, under components, let's create a folder called forms. In future, you might want to enhance this application to add more forms. So I'm just keeping that option for you. A new file called codeexplainform.jsx. Let's create the component structure. Basic component structure is ready. So what I can do now, I go to code entry, I import code explain form and then put it right after the header. And I want to quickly check whether my basic code stuff working. Yes, so there is a header and I can see this form coming. So if I go to the form now and start adding all its element, I'm sure that is going to start rendering over here, right? So let's go ahead and do that. In this application, at least on the UI side, the form is very important for you to understand, because once you understand like how I'm using the React 19's capability, to do this form, server actions, and etc., I think you will understand the entire picture very, very well. Moving to the form, let us first complete the entire JSX part of it. For that, I will take this div inside this parenthesis because I'm going to add way more thing into it going forward. I'll remove this guy, and inside this div, let's add a form. So we wrap that form inside a div so that we can provide a few styles to make things look better. The styles are like making the full width, 100% width, W full, then give a background of white color, give some padding, give a rounded border corner and some shadow, right? That's what we want to do. And inside that, we are putting the form. Now, of course, the form will have few form elements. What are the elements that we're looking for? First thing is like a select box to select the languages. So for that purpose, let's add a label. So I've added a label saying it's language, and for this label, let's add a select box. For select box HTML element, we can provide a name called language. You can provide a bunch of class names, for example, giving a border, giving a rounded corner, make the background transparent because you're already dealing with a background color of white there. Of course, the select box need the options, right? So we need three options over here: JavaScript and Java and Python. You can add mini mode, you can add Go, you can add Rust, whatever you want. Just enhance this code because all the thing that I'm writing is on the GitHub, and the link to that source code is in the description of this video. So go ahead and check it out. So let me add those three options. All right. So my first element, level and the select box, now should be inside the form, where the form is inside a container. Let's see how this thing's coming out so far. Excellent. So I have this JavaScript, Python, Java, and now I'm going to bring a text area below it and then the button to submit the form. Now for the text area, again, let's get a label first. So the label is saying it's your code, where user will be copy pasting the code. And for this, we will bring a text area. Let's give this text area a name called code. We will make it mandatory, means it's required. Let's provide a placeholder saying, hey, paste your code here. And we can also give a bunch of class name with the border, rounded border, some kind of padding, all this kind of setup. So as it is not going to have anything inside, I can just close the text area here itself. So my text area is also there along with the label. I'll go back to the UI ones. I should see the text area. Yeah, great. So I have a language. I have the text area where I can actually start writing the code or start copy pasting the code. Now I need a button to submit this form so that I can call my server action along with the value that user is selecting from here and copy pasting here. So let's go back to code again and let us bring a button right after this text area. This is the button. We will say it is for explaining code. So explain code and a few options of it. The type will be a submit button. Fair enough. And of course, we'll add a few classes so that it looks like a button with a background color, white text color, rounded border, font semi-bold. When I mouse over, I'm making the color a little more darker so that user understand, hey, okay, something happening, something action is happening. So my button is also ready. Now with that, I'll go to the UI once more. Excellent. So you see this color change? Yeah. Now it's time that you start doing something about the form submission. Now for submitting the form, there are multiple ways that you can do. We can handle this form. For example, we can have an onSubmit method. OnSubmit method will be called, and inside the onSubmit method, we can have a fetch API. And using the fetch API, we can actually call our REST endpoint. That's a very usual way, usual practice in React that we do. But as we are using React 19, we should be leveraging the concepts of React 19 to make sure that the code we write is minimal and it is more controlled and more constructive, so that if in case of future enhancements or any kind of bug fixing, it is much easy for us to handle. So let's do that. For that purpose, we are going to use a hook call useActionState. So let me import a hook called useActionState. Now, if you're following my channel, you know that I have already created useActionState video. I have a playlist on React 19 where each of these form hooks are explained in detail with code and project. You can go ahead and check that video to understand the thing much more depth, but I will also explain to you as and when I am proceeding with this one. Okay. So what is this useActionState hook? This hook is introduced recently to make sure that you handle your form based on the output of a form action and the form state. What do I mean by form state? So when you're submitting the form, something has to happen, and that something usually asynchronous in nature. For example, you are making an API call. You are making an API call, but you're unsure when that API call response will come back. It depends on your network speed, latency, and many things. But you cannot really hold the form and the user experience because some call is taking longer. At the same time, you want to tell your user, hey, something is going on. We are making this call and want to notify you some way. So you want to get a state of it, like what has been going on. And that is what we call form state, whether a call is pending, call is completed, all this thing. Previously, how we used to do it? We used to have our own state variable called is loading, is error, etc. And when you initiate a fetch call, we'll be making is loading as true. And after the call has been successful or error out, we'll do is loading is false. And then taking the is loading, we'll be doing a lot of stuff in our JSX. That's a lot of boilerplate code. We can actually get rid of all of this because use action state is going to give us, if a particular action call is pending, what is the action that we are dealing with, and what is the form state, whether it's a success, it's an error, that you can define, you can customize and tell your form, hey, based on this state, can you please take care of my JSX in this way? So that's the whole purpose. Now let us see the usage of it. For use action state hook to work, you need a server action. So we'll pause this here, go and create a server action first. For that purpose, under src, create a new folder called actions. Inside actions, create a new file called index.js. We call it as server action. It means that it executes on the server. It doesn't execute on your browser. And to tell React that this is server action, you have to use a directive called use server. So first write use server at the top of the file. After that, let's create a server action. The server action at the end of the day is nothing but a plain old JavaScript function, but an asynchronous one. If you're new to what is JavaScript function, what is asynchronous call, asynchronous functions, etc., I have 40 days of JavaScript already built for you so that you can go deeper, learn from it. Please check it out. All right. So let's create one export async function and let's give a name of the function called explain, and this is my action or the server function. This gets two things. One is something called a previous state, and then the form data. We'll be using form data more because whatever is submitted by filling up in that form, all will be available inside this form data. For example, we have code and language, isn't it? So we can get the code value like form data dot get and then passing the code. In case you wonder what it is, you go to the form and this text area has a name called code, right? So this is what the value of it is, what we are interested in accessing. That's what we'll get it inside the form data object. So form data dot get passing this value of this name attribute will give me the value that you have entered or user have entered inside the text area. So we got the code over here. Similarly, for language, we have language, isn't it? So I can do const language equals to form data dot get language. Now I have both code and language. Now it's time I can actually start making the API call. What is our API call? API call is localhost 3001. That's where my API server is running. Slash API slash explain code, and I have to make a post call. As simple as that. So let's do that, isn't it? Now, one thing again I follow as a practice is like all this API URL, all the API base URL and everything is better to keep it in the env file or somewhere else than in your code, so that tomorrow if it changes, because right now it's running on localhost 3001, once you put it on some hosting services, the URL will change, right? You can change in one place than changing in every place in your code, right? So that's the whole purpose. In your React project, you should find a .env. And if you don't, let's create one new file .env, and inside this let's create an environment variable which is having a value of your server URL. So this is a server URL like localhost 3001 where the server is running slash API is always there in front of all the APIs. Right now we have only one API. And one thing to note over here, as we're using Vite, so the environment variable to get resolved in your component, it has to start with this particular prefix called Vite underscore. So Vite underscore API underscore base URL is what we have written. Now we'll go to index.js file, and coming here, let's start with a try and catch. All these errors are related to ESLint. I know we'll be solving them one by one. So the first thing, we'll be making that particular API call. So it has to be an async call. So we'll be using the await keyword and the fetch method. Here I have to first pass the URL, right? My endpoint URL that I'll construct using the template literals. How it will be constructed? It will be my API base URL, and then I have to pass a few options to tell what kind of call it is. Of course, it is going to be a post call. So I have to tell the method is post. Then we will pass a header saying content type is application/JSON. And this is where we will be passing the body or the payload. You remember we did it already when we tested this using Postman. So we have to stringify it. I told you that time, and we'll be passing this code, comma, language. That's all basically. But we have to catch this in a variable, which we can call as response, res. Next, we can check if res.ok is not present, that means by some chance this call didn't go through, then we can construct some kind of error messages. We can say success is false because this is not a success case, and let's construct a error saying fail to fetch the results. Okay, now in case the result is okay, we'll go ahead and fetch the result. So we'll say const data equals to await. We have the response, and on that there is a method called JSON. So we'll get the data over here, and then we can return the data in the same way, but this time we can say success is true, and we also want to return the entire data. Excellent. In the catch itself, we can actually handle in the similar format. Here also we can say that success is false and error is an error occurred. We already have the error object. From there I can take the messages. Excellent. So my index.js and my only one server action or the function that I needed is now ready. Now I have to go to my form and I have to import this function. import explain from the actions, and it's time that I start using this use action state hook. Now to use that, inside your component at the top of it, use the use action hook. What it takes as an argument, it takes a mandatory argument which is your server action and all other optional arguments. So explain is my server action. I have passed it. What it returns, this is what is more important and to know. It returns something called a form state. Interesting, right? And then it can return the action itself. And then it returned a boolean variable called is pending. So is pending signifies if the form submission is done or it is in progress. So your is loading, that kind of variable need is completely gone. Form action is a reference to this explain action itself, so that if you want to do anything further using this action, you can do that. Form state is the return value that you have mentioned from this action. For example, whenever you are returning something where the error happened, your form state is this object. So if you do form state dot success, if it is false, you know it's an error. If it is a success case, if you do success is form state dot success, if it is true, then you know I have to extract the data. So inside the form state, you have this entire information. Beautiful, isn't it? Now, as I have this form action, instead of using this particular action that I have created, the only way that you stitch your use action state hook to your form is by specifying an action attribute and pass this form action as a value. So see, you are not passing this explain action directly over here. You are passing this to a use action state, and the use action state, whatever it is giving as a form action, that is what you are adding as the value of your action of the form. That's how this form is now connected to the use action state. First thing we are already using. Now we'll start using form state and is pending. Let's use is pending first. For that, we'll go to the button. That's the right use case. Along with type submit, we can have something called disabled. We can keep the button disabled so that someone don't click on it again and again when the call is in progress. So if it is pending, we can make it as disabled. And then instead of saying explain code, I can make it conditional. I can say when is pending, that time say explaining. And once it is not pending, it means the call is already over. Only on that time, let's call it as explain code. So now based on is pending value of this particular action execution, I am now changing this button text. So it will be very clearly saying that, hey, explaining versus, explain code. All right. So this is done with now is pending. Now I can do few more things with the form state, because if the form is getting submitted or if the form is in progress, based on is success or error condition, I am getting an object back. In that object, either I have the error message or I have the data. So it's very powerful, isn't it? So I can take this form state and make use of it. So let's go to the bottom where the form ends, and over here I can say if is pending. I want to give a message. Okay, something is going on, because users should know some of this, model execution may take certain time based on what kind of plan you have, and what kind of input you have given, what kind of output you are expecting. It might take some time. So we can say, like, when it is thinking, like, what is this code? AI is thinking, not yet responded. We can say AI is thinking, correct? Some kind of message we can give. So over here, if it is pending state, we can say it is thinking, and we have put it inside a p tag. Fine, fair enough, and given some kind of styling to it. You understand that. Now if it is not pending but it's a success scenario, in that case we can get the data, and inside the data we have something called explanation. That is what we are sending as a response, if you remember, and we can show that explanation. So now I can do, if it is a success case, in that case I can show that entire explanation that I'm getting from the response over here. For this purpose, let's assume that we will create a component called code explanation. Okay, we have not created it yet, but we will create it, called code explanation, and we will have a props for that called explanation. And in this props we will pass this form state data. In that there is a data dot explanation. Okay, let's assume it is not there yet, but we will be creating it soon. Now in other case, when the form state dot success is false, that means it's an error case, correct? So in that case, we are already setting up something called error with the error messages. You can see over here. So fun will be Coming to the form, I can say if the form state the success is false, then let's imagine there will be another component will be creating called error. In that we can pass this error as a props with the form state dot error. Simple. Why form state is getting error? Okay, I missed a T. My bad. So now form state is fine. Now we'll be getting two error for code explanation and error components because we have not created them. Let's create them. Simple component code explanation where the explanation will be passed, and then the error component where the error will be passed. So these two things we can show. Let's go ahead inside src components, right click, new file, code explanation.jsx, a simple code explanation component. Let's keep it this way. Let's remove this guy. Let's add some class to this div, so that it looks beautiful. It has a different section kind of look. You can read it like I'm again giving 100% width, some margin top, a gray background because my main background is white. It will look a little bit different than that. A bit of padding, rounded corner, and some kind of shadow, right? And inside that I can put a h2 saying that this is the explanation of your code, and here I can put a p tag. And if you remember, in the explanation we wanted a prop called explanation through which the explanation is coming inside, and over here I'm just printing it. That this much is enough. Subclasses for h2 I can put so that it looks little better. I think this is enough. This explanation part is enough. Now we need to create an error also, right? So let's create an error, a simple component, new file, error.jsx. Let's create error. We are expecting a props call error over here, and we can just print this error in a p tag. That's it. Let me do some formatting. Awesome. Now I'll go to my form once more because I need to import this too. So going to the form, yes, now I have imported code explanation and error both. So I think now we have stitched everything. Let me go to the UI because it's been a while I have tested anything. Things are fine. Things are looking good. Okay. I will also check if I'm running the server. So let's see that as well. Let me go to the server. No, it is not running. Let me run the server. It's running on localhost 3001. Excellent. Now let me go back to the UI once more. And let's choose JavaScript and let's select any code from the web. Okay, let's take this particular code snippet. For example, I've just copied it and then I'll come over here and let's say this is the code, JavaScript code. I'll do explain code. I'm clicking on explain code, see, saying explaining, thinking. Let's see, either it will give an error or it will give an output. Yes, I got the output. Great explanation, and I got this output from my AI. However, this output is not readable. Can I do something about it? Looks like this is kind of a markdown syntax. This is for bold, this is for code. So how about I use something to print this markdown in a better way? That will be great, no? Let's go back to code once more. Let's open up our command prompt and a new one. Let's go to CodesPlane and install two dependencies. First, called React-Markdown so that I can actually handle the markdown, and then another plugin for it called Remark-GFM. Install these two. I have to give yarn add, not just yarn. All right, let them get installed. Awesome. Now I can close this terminal and I have to come to the component where I'm showing the explanation, which is code explanation. Okay, so this is code explanation. Let me remove everything else. So here, import markdown and then the remark gfm, those two things that I have installed. And now instead of this p tag, use this markdown and define the remark plugin, pass this remark gfm. That's it. This is the only code change that you have done. Now let's get back to the UI. All right, JavaScript again. Let's pick up some code, maybe this one itself. Let's come back and then explain the code. Is thinking. It will take some time. We all know. Now it will come back with result very soon. Yes. Is it looking far better? Yes, it is. You see this? You can now read it much better. Awesome, isn't it? So it's explain the code in a way. Explain the code in plain English. Create a list of numbers, let a equals to this, add all these things. You can read it out. It is basically doing everything for you. Excellent. Now, one small thing that I want to do, going to the code, we are almost done. Coming to index.html file, I'm just going to change this to Codeexplain. Yeah, I can see this title over here. So it's looking good. Now I want to do a couple of things over here. Maybe three things. First thing, all my videos ends with task. I want to give you some task. The task over here is you have to fix one bug. First is, let me put this code, copy this code, paste it over here. And if I do explain code, you see this code over here. Now the explanation will come. The code gone. It is tough for me because now the code is gone. I don't know, like, which code it is explaining. So it's better the code stays back even after I hit the explain code. So that's a bug in the code. I have left it for you to fix it. The reason is you will get the familiarity with the code. That's the only thing. Okay. I don't want to test you, but just that you will get familiarity with the code. That's the reason. Second is add an icon over here to do copy to clipboard. There is a way to copy to clipboard in JavaScript so that you can copy it within a click on a button and you can paste it anywhere else, maybe in your blog or anywhere else. So can you implement this copy to clipboard? If you have done this, please come to my Discord and talk about it. Post it, I would like to know if you're done. To join my Discord, the Discord link is in the description of this video. Please go ahead, check it out and join. And the third thing is, sooner we are getting started with another initiative after 40 days of JavaScript is called 15 days of React design patterns. So we'll be learning React design patterns together. Thanks for all the love that you guys have gave for 40 days of JavaScript. I'm sure that 15 days of React design pattern will receive much, much more love than that. So please subscribe to my channel tapaScript so that you don't miss it out. All right. Now, I told some time back that I'm going to give you some hints about summarize a paragraph, writing assistant, this chat message, and etc. As we have built together explained code, all these things, all the remaining of the thing, for example, summarize a paragraph or doing a writing assistant, is just about changing the prompt, isn't it? So you can have a text area, for example, where you can put any of the bunch of paragraphs, and if you can pass that text with a post call to your server, taking in the server that particular text, if you can create a prompt, hey, you are my writing assistant. Now please fix all the grammatical mistakes, make this writing much more better, and give me a much beautiful output and give me a formatted output as a response. If you create a form, if you create a prompt out of it, you will get a response, right? So it means whatever we have done so far in our server side, you can just leverage it. Instead of taking code and language, you will take something called writing. And taking the writing, you will form your own prompt. And that prompt, you will pass it to this completion.create. You will take a model similar to mine because that also going to be text to text. And you will get a response, and the response you will be returning back the same way that I have done. It's exactly the same thing. Why don't you try out something like that? So the whole idea of this project was to give you a start. I hope you have followed me. I hope you have started coding with me. If not, again, the code is there in the description of this video. Please pick it up, start trying it out, start changing things. I'm sure you will break that shackle and you will start building along with UI, along with API, along with AI and its model to create something which is meaningful. This is just a very small example. We can extend it to any extent. I hope you will be doing it. I'm very, very curious to know if you are ready for the 15 days of React design pattern. If so, please give a comment below. Let me know how excited you are so that I also get motivated and come back to you with all those great content. Don't forget to subscribe. Stay well, stay healthy, keep learning.